and gentlemen, please welcome the reigning, the defending, and the undefeated IBF welterweight champion of the world, introducing the true Arrow Spence Jr.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble! Welcome to the motherfucking ring, lady. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Whoa. What's wrong with Khan, man? Why everybody always talking about Khan? Man, shit. Look at all the people that he didn't beat. That everybody, you know, want to get names off of, like Chris Algieri.
I haven't beat anybody better than Chris Algieri. Not
Name
one
the top guy he fought that's better than Chris Algieri.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
He beat a lot of motherfuckers though.
Yeah.
So how is he the big boogeyman? Well, only person that he beat at the time was Lamont Peterson.
They was terrified when they got in the ring with Matisse. That's why they gave Danny all that credit. Because everybody was terrified of him.
But they don't give...
They ain't gonna give you no credit, bud.
But they don't give Postal no credit for,
Postal
for stopping him.
Step aside, man.
Yes, they did, bud. That's why.
I laughed.
That's why when you jumped on him. That's why when you jumped on him.
Hey, step aside, money.
Hey, when I'm jumping on these undefeated fighters with no losses, before I fight them, they say, oh, they did say that, but then when I fight them, it's like
you make them look bad.
But Matisse was this killer, you know. Then when you look at all the other fighters, I ain't gonna talk about them. I ain't gonna talk about everybody because they make it seem like Kell Brook this big killer. When who Kell Brook fight besides Porter and got knocked out by fucking Triple G? Porter and Triple G.
Oh, with Crawford?
That's
I'm right here.
So how is he considered one of the top welterweights in the division when he only beat Porter?
Going off potential because he can fight.
You see how you made Hearn look?
But I ain't fight nobody. They want to give Pacquiao all the credit in the world for fighting people, but they don't want to give me no credit for stopping Jeff Hearn. And he busted up, bullied Pacquiao.
Right.
The fight shouldn't even been that close if Jeff Hearn was a bum.
Right.
If he was a bum, then Pacquiao should have did just like I did. Right. Made it an easy fight and got him out of there.
Facts.
But did he do that? No, he went to war with that man. Got busted up by that man. Got pushed around like a little kid by that man. And Jeff Hearn, him and Spence was considered as two of the biggest welterweights in the division. But, you know, they ain't gonna give me no credit.
We got one more title. We need the Ring magazine. We got two already. Y'all try to, like, the Ring don't mean nothing. The Ring, we got two of them. We got two of them. What you got? An IBF? A WBC? Come on, man.
Two
one?
separate weight classes. And two
That's just a belt. Everybody got street WBCs, street WBAs, two IBFs. But when you the Ring magazine, what you got? It's one.
Say it to him, Bernard.
It's one. Y'all heard of Lineal? If y'all boxing fans, y'all heard of Lineal? That's the man that beat that man in Galley back. Two of them.
That is Terrence Crawford and friends addressing certain of Terrence Crawford's critics, addressing certain of the talking points that many of Terrence's critics like to make against him. How they like to trash his resume, trash him, trash the people who he's fought. And before we even get into this thing, you gotta realize something. Let me preface everything I'm about to say with this.
Pay attention.
Terrence Crawford's critics are not boxing fans. And it's not boxing. It's not from a boxing perspective that they're even criticizing Terrence Crawford. Because when it comes to the sport of boxing, these guys don't know the ball from the bounce when it comes to the boxing of the shit. The only reason they're actually criticizing Terrence Crawford and everyone who he's fought and anyone who he's about to fight, the only reason they're doing that is because they're fans of the PBC. So in essence, these guys are not talking boxing. They're talking promotion.
They don't know shit about boxing.
You want to know how I know this? If Terrence Crawford, tomorrow morning, decided to make an announcement and said, I'm going to join the PBC, the same critics that are trashing him today would be singing his praises tomorrow. Their entire perspective, their entire demeanor, their criticisms, they would all evaporate if Terrence Crawford was to cross the street and become a PBC fighter. So in essence, the arguments and the criticisms that they're levying have very little to do with boxing and have more to do with promotion, because you got a lot of guys out there that for some reason they feel like they're the PBC's unofficial street team. They feel so inclined to act like mascots for a promotional outfit that isn't even cutting them a check. I mean, it's the reality of the shit, that if you're seeing these kinds of criticisms levied towards what is arguably the most accomplished American active fighter and champion out there, if they're treating him like this, it's not because the guy can't box, it's not because his opponents suck, it's not because of any of that. It's just because they're fans of a rival promotional outfit. A promotional outfit that says they're not a promotional outfit, but operates like a promotional outfit. That is a video for another day. The point that I'm making to you guys out there is, you can't spend too much time on that shit, because most of the shit them guys say don't even make sense. How could you sit there and say that this guy hasn't fought anybody and his whole resume is trash and he hasn't done anything, but you're also sitting there high on Errol Spence for beating who? Leonard Bundu? Chris Algieri? Chris Van Heer?
Phil LaGreco?
What? His biggest win is still, today, Kell Brook off a loss and a weight cut. I mean, we're gonna act like that kind of stuff doesn't matter leading up to a fight? I mean, hell, that's the reason I picked Errol Spence to win that fight. Because I felt that, Kell Brook coming off of that ass whooping and that weight cut, there's a lot of things working against him in that fight. But, Crawford's critics, who just so happen to be Spence's fans, they ignore shit like that. They're more impressed with Errol Spence squaring off against a 135-pound fighter than Terrence Crawford wiping his whole ass with his entire weight class. They're more impressed by that. So tomato, tomato, I know that it doesn't make a lot of sense, but when you look beyond the boxing to get to the point, what's the real nature of the criticism that Terrence Crawford's critics have? What's the real nature of that shit? What you're gonna find is it don't got nothing to do with boxing. It's about promotional outfits. It's about PBC and Top Rank. That's what it's about. That any fighter or any promotion, any event that isn't a PBC event to them is bad. And that's not even exclusive to Top Rank fighters. It applies across the board to these guys. They don't like Top Rank fighters any more than they like Matchroom fighters any more than they like fucking Golden Boy fighters. To them, if it's not a PBC fighter and it's not a PBC event, then it's bad. So why would you spend time splitting hairs with someone who employs that kind of logic when that kind of logic is illogical? That's why, I could sit here going over every talking point and dissecting how those criticisms don't even make any sense. I could sit here and ask, how is Errol Spence beating a guy coming right off a loss better than Terrence Crawford cleaning out a weight class? I can ask things like, well, if Terrence Crawford hasn't fought anybody, then what's Victor Postol? Didn't Danny Garcia pay him to step aside? Wasn't Victor Postol his mandatory challenger via the WBC? And didn't that same Victor Postol, the one that Danny paid to step aside, didn't he go on to stop Lucas Mathise and procure the WBC title? Didn't Terrence Crawford go on to beat him easy after that? Jeff Hearn that gave Manny Pacquiao a better fight than Adrian Broner just did. Jeff Hearn. Now, you might think that Jeff won, you might think that Manny won. It depends on who you ask, but one way or another, what we can say is that Jeff the Hornet Hearn put up a hell of a lot more of a fight than Adrian Broner did.
I'm lying.
Against Manny Pacquiao. But when he was in there with Terrence Crawford, Crawford starched him easy. But you guys keep saying that he hasn't fought anybody, and that's why the comments are baseless. You can't clean out an entire weight class, take on all the champions, all the contenders in that weight class. We're talking about 140. This before he even moved up to welterweight. You can't take on an entire weight class worth of champions and contenders and not fight anybody. You can't be the two-time lineal at 135 and 140. Procure the Ring Magazine titles at 135 and 140. You can't get to those, you can't pick this stuff up fighting nobodies. So when I hear, these criticisms and I see Terrence Crawford addressing them, I can understand why he might feel some type of way. Maybe from where he's sitting, he doesn't really know what the nature of the criticism is. But on the ground level, where the fans live, I'm fully aware why motherfuckers are saying that shit, and it ain't got nothing to do with boxing. It has to do with promotional outfits. Thus, it's a waste of time talking boxing with motherfuckers that ain't even talking about boxing, because that's not why they're criticizing the guy. They're not even criticizing his boxing so much as they're criticizing his promoter. It's not a new conversation. It's not even something that I haven't addressed before. I have addressed it before, but I'll tell you, anybody sitting around telling himself that Crawford hasn't fought anybody, take a good long look at who that person is, where they're coming from, and why they'd be saying that. And then you'll realize, like I realized, these guys are not boxing fans and they're not talking about boxing. Because if they were, they'd know that this guy is one of the best, if not the best.
Yes, Danny J. Gibbs has made an absolute fortune. And now, I remember, actually I should bring it up to Nestor. Yeah. Nestor said to me at the Machuk-Sulecki fight, at the press conference, "Hey, do you think you've done a good job for Danny Jacobs? Oh, look at you. He's fighting Sulecki. He just fought Arias. No one's ever heard of him. People saying he should never have left the PBC. Eddie Hearn, Eddie Hearn." Yeah, Nestor, go fuck yourself. Yeah, because he boxed Sulecki, then he fought Derevyanchenko for the world title, and now he is making 8 digits to fight Canelo in one of the biggest fights in boxing. So where is Nestor? I'm going to go and talk to him about that. He needs to apologise to me live on air. The job that I've done for Danny Jacobs is the same job that but Nestor said it. But the job that I've done for Danny Jacobs with Keith Connolly, one of the best managers in boxing, is the job that I can do for all these fighters. And there's nothing like word of mouth, yeah, between fighters. Because PBC, Showtime will be telling these fighters, don't sign with Eddie Hearn, don't sign with DAZN, he's this, he's that. And the fighter goes, okay, if you're a fighter and you're watching this, speak to fighters, yeah? Speak to Danny Jacobs, speak to Tevin Farmer, speak to these kind of guys, because that's where you find out the truth, all right?
You know, it is true that certain members of the media, they questioned Eddie Hearn's ability to do his job in regards to his fighters, more particular to this conversation, Daniel Jacobs. They questioned his ability to put Daniel Jacobs in a power position. And yet, since making the move over there to Matchroom USA, since leaguing up with Eddie Hearn, and I've talked about it several times in several videos already, Daniel Jacobs' stock has risen. He has been putting up very good viewership numbers. He has been putting up by himself better viewership numbers comparatively than some PBC fighters. Some PBC fighters who, yeah, you might talk about them a whole lot, but it seems that when these particular fights came on, a lot of motherfuckers just wasn't paying attention. Daniel Jacobs' fight with Maciej Sulecki, which took place on HBO, that fight pulled in more viewership than not only Jarrett Hurd versus Erislandy Lara, Mikey Garcia versus Sergey Lipinets, Danny Garcia versus Sean Porter, Danny Garcia versus Brandon Rios, Leo Santa Cruz versus Abner Mares 2. Daniel Jacobs' viewership numbers with that one fight with Maciej Sulecki drew in more viewership numbers than those fights. And you can't even use that lame excuse that a lot of PBC's fans like to use, that, oh, well, it's a premium cable channel. Well, so's HBO. That didn't stop Daniel Jacobs from putting up those numbers. So, I mean, really, what's the excuse? These are the numbers I'm displaying to you here. These are last year's numbers for some of PBC's cards. Comparatively, Daniel Jacobs put up better viewership numbers than all of those cards. And yet, certain members of the media felt so inclined to question Eddie Hearn's ability to do his job and put his fighter in a power position. The same fighter that today sits on the precipice of what is a very big fight with one of the biggest names in the sport of boxing, Canelo Alvarez. So my question to not only the members of the media, but also the fans who seem to think that Eddie Hearn don't know how to do his job. Haven't you noticed that Daniel Jacobs' viewership numbers have been going up? Haven't you noticed that since he leagued up with Eddie Hearn, his viewership is up? He's a world champion now, holding a full version of a world title, and he's about to participate in a very big fight on May 4th with a very big name opponent, Canelo Alvarez. That same Canelo Alvarez, who a PBC fighter in Jamal Charlo, he wants that fight too. But they didn't make that happen for Jamal, whereas here, Eddie Hearn, his fighters got that fight. So you really got to ask, and you really got to question the merit of certain members of the media when they don't report the news as it is and they don't tell the stories evenly. That while Nestor Gibbs, for example, felt so inclined to question Eddie Hearn's ability to do his job with his fighter, there were other fights that had already taken place. Other fights in March, other fights in April, before that Sulecki fight took place. There were other fights that took place, and the viewership numbers for those fights were kind of low. And you know, those members of the media didn't make light of that PBC's viewership numbers in 2018 were kind of low. But they did feel so inclined as to question Eddie Hearn's ability to do his job, even though his fighters' viewership numbers were higher than all of those. Now, I'm gonna tell you something. There's certain fans that conduct themselves a certain way, but those kinds of behaviors are not exclusive to fans. There are members of the media that are just as biased and partial as the fans are, and those members of the media are the kind of people that would want you to believe that Eddie Hearn not doing his job, that he's not doing right by his fighter, and yet it's his fighter who has very good viewership in the year of 2018. All things considered, given what happened with HBO, it's a wonder that Daniel Jacobs was able to garner that much viewership for an opponent like Sulecki. that put up better numbers than Garcia versus Porter. Let that sink in. That's Eddie Hearn's fighter, right? Now you're looking at that. He put up very good numbers. Today he's a full-fledged world champion. Also a byproduct of being on the right side of the street with the right people. Also a byproduct of going over there to match, chilling with Eddie Hearn. And now you see that he's about to be involved in a very big fight. And once again, that's a byproduct of all of this. It's all synergy. It's all a domino effect. Making all the right moves. Does it really look like you need to question what Eddie Hearn is doing? Isn't it his guy that's in a power position right now? There just so happens to be a PBC fighter in the middleweight division. We know who. Jamal Charlo. But Jamal Charlo ain't close to no Canelo fight. He not. And quite honestly, he'd be lucky if Demetrius Andrade, WBO champion, decided to give him the time of day because he really doesn't have to. He may end up fighting Billy Joe Saunders. Essentially,
who's doing better?
Eddie Hearn's fighters seem to be doing well for themselves. You'll notice that Tevin Farmer has got the O'Carroll fight coming up very soon. Whereas right now we're hearing rumors, we're hearing news that Gervonta Davis' showcase fight against Abner Mares is about to get scrapped because Abner Mares might be injured. But you notice that the Eddie Hearn boys, their guys, on their side of the street, they doing all right. They keeping busy, they're having fights, defending their titles and gaining momentum steadily, which is basically what he promised anyone that decided to come over to Matchroom USA, that you will fight on a regular basis, that there's no need for talented fighters to sit on the shelf collecting dust when that's hindering and hampering their momentum. Fighters need to fight. It seems that Eddie Hearn has been true to his word. That's what it seems like. When you review this information objectively, it seems that Eddie Hearn is delivering. He's doing right by his fighters and he's delivering on his word. Whereas certain members of the media, they don't want you to look at it that way. And that's why they ask certain questions. That's why they headline their videos in a certain manner. Because they're not giving you the news even though they're members of the media. What they're actually doing is peddling propaganda. Because they're partial, just as partial as some fans are to a particular fighter or a particular promotional outfit. Thus, you'll notice that certain guys that are really big on the PBC and their fighters and their events, you'll notice that you can't really trust their news when it comes to other subjects, when it involves other promoters and other fighters. You'll notice that their news looks and sounds a certain way when they're talking about other guys that aren't PBC guys, guys like Eddie Hearn. But you know, it's all layers of the same onion, whether we're talking about the fans' behaviors or some members of the media. It's all layers of the same onion. Partial and biased behavior towards PBC and the propaganda being peddled by their supporters.